Blood is the latest Hulu original to hit the streaming service in time for Halloween, or Huluween as they like to brand themselves. It's directed and written by Brandon Braga and executive produced by Seth MacFarlane of Fuzzy Door Productions, guys. This is a horror anthology movie based off of the Books of Blood by Clive Barker. This movie has 3 different stories that will eventually converge and they'll kind of connect as it goes on. And it all involves some creepy stuff going on, so it's perfect for the Huluween. I was pretty interested in this movie because Seth MacFarlane kind of started talking about it on his Instagram. He put up a poster and I was like, that's a groovy looking poster, you know? The fact that it's based off of a book series is also interesting. From what I've heard though, and this isn't like I've researched it in depth, but I've heard like a little bit of like they didn't actually adapt any specific story. They kind of made up stuff just in the same vein. I don't know if that's true or not, but even if, I was still pretty excited because I have not read the book, so I don't have that kind of attachment. The fact that it was Seth MacFarlane producing this was really surprising to me because he's, you know, Mr. Animation funny guy who does sci-fi on the Orville. Then again, this is an executive producer credit, so who knows how much creative involvement he had. He might have just gotten picked up because the director and writer of this, Brandon Braga, not only has he worked on some Star Trek stuff in the past, but he's currently working on the Orville with Seth MacFarlane. So maybe it was one of those things where he was like, hey Seth, I need an executive producer. I need some help. Want to help me make this movie? And he was like, sure, I'll put my name on it. There you go. But nonetheless, the trailer had me interested in this, and I was hoping this could maybe be Hulu's Trick or Treat. Not just the fact that it's like an anthology movie, but that it could also be like really great and well made. And this movie is definitely pretty fun, like if you're watching it in the right time. Like if you want to watch something that's spooky, but especially now since it's Halloween, you're looking for anything kind of creepy or spooky to happen in your movies, then this was kind of fun for me. You know, I unfortunately can't really say it's an overall recommendation or that it's overall great. This review might be very muddled as far as like me jumping from one point to the next, so I apologize if it seems like I'm not very consistent with talking about positives and negatives. It's probably just going to be a big blur. But that's how much I have to really say about this, because I had fun with it, but I have some issues that I would like to address. This movie is very well made for the most part, though. I think Brandon Braga did a pretty good job with this. There's a lot of creepy imagery here and there, like some really cool practical stuff they have where I was like, ooh, that's actually pretty cool. Like the Book of Blood itself, I won't spoil to you what it is, but it was really groovy to see what it actually was. Instead of just being an actual book, it was something else, and I was like, ooh, that's actually kind of creepy, and I like that. I like that visual. There's certain scares in this movie where there's no music, like there's no bong, and I was like, ah, how refreshing. I can just look at something that's scary and be creeped out by it. That is so good. It doesn't mean that every once in a while there isn't some form of like jump that's a little lazy. Like there's one part where no one else is in the room with Britt Robertson, very obviously, while she's listening to something on the wall. Then she gets spooked by a little cockroach coming out of it, and she like jumps and turns around, and then the woman taking care of this bed and breakfast she's at is right there like, oh, hey, I was just standing right behind you and looking at you, and you didn't hear me walk in, and I didn't say anything as I was walking in. You just got jumped. And it's like, you know, there's a couple times where some of the scares they set up don't exactly work, but for the most part, I think Braga did a very good job handling this, and I could see him potentially having a future if he wanted to stick with horror, or if Hulu wanted to make Books of Blood 2. I guess they could. There's plenty of Clive Barker stories that they could adapt for it, so who knows? This could be the start of something. But speaking of the Britt Robertson storyline, I did want to mention really quick that out of the 3, that is definitely, I think, the most enjoyable one, the most entertaining. Britt Robertson is very good in this movie. She's a really good actress, and in this movie, her character, at first it starts off like, okay, you recognize she has some issues. There's a certain thing that's traumatizing her from her past, and as it goes on, you learn a bit more near the end, and you're like, oh, okay, it all kind of clicks, and it's one of those character arcs that isn't like, I'm going to get some hope or I'm going to become a better person. It's one of those downward spiral kind of character arcs that is also pretty fun if you handle it right, if it's like perfectly kind of morbid, and I think they handled it pretty well. You had a really great actress to carry it too, which makes it fun. You don't really know if certain things she's getting spooked by are actually happening or if it's because she hasn't taken her meds, which is obviously a pretty good setup. But the people taking care of this bed and breakfast she's at, she like leaves her home to escape from it all, and she stops here. The actors are Freda Foshen and Nicholas Campbell, and they are really fun at a certain point. At first they're like, yeah, there's a sweet couple there, you know, they're doing a good job for what they have, but then at one point it's like, okay, now you're gonna really enjoy their performances, and I was definitely on board with them. They were definitely a lot of fun. The storyline, though, gets a little weird near the end, and let me explain a bit of that really quick. Like, for example, there's this guy that Britt Robertson thinks she's seeing, nobody else maybe can, or maybe it is a real guy, we don't really know. And then at one point it finally reveals itself as, oh no, this is actually a pretty normal thing. It was like a red herring. And I was like, well, this guy did something near the beginning that feels more in line with like a supernatural kind of thing, like not something a normal person would be able to do, and I can't really say it without spoiling. I just didn't really buy the reveal that it was a bit more normal because of that, and they just kept playing it up to the point where when he finally comes into the plot, they get rid of him kind of instantly. And it's like, I understand why his presence is kind of important for the story to progress later, but it's I don't have the strongest connection towards this, and it hasn't really made that much of an impression on me. Also, with that storyline with Britt Robertson, it gets to a point where the staging of it gets kind of weird. It turns into like the poor filmmaking of like an Into the Dark special for Blumhouse, you know, where these characters that do something to Britt Robertson, they're like, this will last for a while, so we're good to go do some other stuff. But she immediately disproves that and starts moving around. And at one point I thought one of the characters is driving a car, and I thought the way the camera was set up, she was in the headlights. But apparently not, because no one saw her. And also one character was completely covered in blood at one point, and then like a minute later, even though he went to drive a car, the blood is all completely gone. Like, that's a lot. Even if you like got a paper towel or just a regular towel, you'd have like a big old red smear on you, and this guy was completely clean. I do not buy that. And it just goes like for a long time, like they're doing stuff. She's moving around even though they thought she couldn't, and they never go back to check. It's one of those situations, and I don't want to give too much away without going specifically into the details of it, because once the story eventually gets back to like the end bit of it, it's actually kind of good, like in a dark kind of morbid horror way. Like, it's actually kind of creepy and kind of good if you're a fan of that kind of thing. But that one section where they required the storyline to get a little bit more thrilling, more edge of your seat kind of tension, that's the part that didn't really work for me. But it had the most going on, so I think I was the most entertained because of that. The next one with Anna Friel, who is using this guy named Simon to talk to ghosts. Like, he does like a weird like ceremony, like with his body, blood shoots all over the walls, and he's like lying on the floor, like doing the Family Guy kind of thing, funny enough. And at first when they set it up, I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting, I want to see where this goes. This actress is doing a good job playing it up. But then at one point, because the way it's kind of structured, it feels the most out of these storylines like a Twilight Zone episode, but the way it's structured, it feels a little bit more procedural. Like, at first this happened, and then we cut to this next scene, and then this next scene, and then we got a twist for you. Hey, something you thought was going on wasn't really going on, and it didn't really hit for me just in that respect because of the structure of it all. But also the actor playing Simon, for the most part, he's doing like a lot of exposition. I'm a proper British guy explaining things to you because I am the one who's the most experienced with the supernatural. And then at one point, he gets a little drunk, and that scene he's in where he's drunk and supposed to be an asshole, I could not buy his performance at all. It was a little goofy. It seemed like he was just kind of tired and wanted to go to bed. Luckily that didn't last long, and he cut right back to, I'm perfectly normal. But, you know, in combination with the fact that the twist wasn't hitting, it was just kind of awkward to watch that whole scene. You know, none of the acting is really bad in this, save for a couple people. And that's when we get to our third storyline, which is like these two hitmen. And I don't even know if it's okay, it's a combination, I think, of like the acting being just a little, not really sure about that, but also like the writing. Like, the movie opens with them, first 2 minutes, and it's like, okay, where's this gonna go? I am curious, you got my attention. And then they cut back to him after these other two storylines, and they have like this lame-ass coffee scene where they're talking to like this barista, and he's like, we're gonna take these coffees to go, and you're gonna pay for them, right? Because we're two hitmen. We'll kill you. That's essentially what they were saying. I think that was, and I think it was supposed to be more funny than it was too. Like, instead of being like super serious. Because of that scene, I had like no reason to really want to follow them anymore other than seeing where this all kind of ties in. But I didn't really care about these characters. I cared much more for the other ones and the other storylines. And I think maybe that was Seth MacFarlane going like, you know what, Brandon, you need some humor here. You should have the scene where these guys are comedically negotiating for coffee, or else they'll kill this guy. That's pretty funny. You should put that in, Brandon. Maybe that's what he used his executive producer credit for. I can't prove that, obviously. But once they do start to connect these storylines, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. You know, and once the movie does start to come to a close and they wrap up everything, I was like, you know what, I did have a fun time for the most part with this movie. But it's just there's some storytelling issues here and there, and there's certain, like, directing things that even though for the most part it's pretty well made, like the cinematography is fine, there's a lot of good creepy imagery, and the score for this movie, very good. It's got that great old, like, eerie music box tune to it, so that's great. But then you have these other moments where certain things kind of start to fall apart because of the directing, and it's like, oh, I wish this was a little bit more tight. There's a thing they do with the editing where there's a couple like digital zooms and like stuff, like you might not even notice it if you're not like paying attention to it, but they'll like fade to red. And I'm sure they only did that because blood is in the title, so instead of fading to black or fading just to the next scene, you should fade to red and then cut to another one. And I don't know, I'm sure this won't bug everyone, but for some reason that was like really odd to me, and I'm not sure why that specifically was like a thing of irritation whenever I saw it. I think it's just like the color itself, like whenever you fade to that and it's just like that like bright red. Like, I was just like, oh, kind of ugly. I don't know, maybe I thought I was watching a YouTube video or something. And this is a small thing. This isn't something I'm knocking the movie for, but it was something that I was kind of irritated by because certain movies do this too, where the movie is coming to a close. The movie's about to cut to black and then we're going to get some credits. And it's like the eerie music box. And it's like, yes, that's a good... The music is giving me the kind of vibe I want to end a movie like this on. And then as soon as directed by Brandon Braga comes up, it's heavy, like, rock music. And I was like, bro, you gotta be kidding me. Like, it's really annoying how they end the movie in a specific tone. But then as soon as the credits come up, they're like, well, we need something maybe a little bit more lively, so put in this music that doesn't fit with how we ended the movie. It could have just been more score. Or have more of that music box continue, maybe just in like a couple different arrangements for it. But it was just rock music they found. And I was surprised that Seth MacFarlane, Mr. Music Man himself, was executive producing this movie and didn't once go like, you know, maybe we should have the credits start, at least the beginning part of these credits should have the same kind of vibe that we ended the movie on with. And then Brandon Braga was just like, shut up, Seth MacFarlane, what do you know about music? Oh, shoot, that's right. Well, frig, I already sent it to Hulu, and there's nothing I can do now to change it. Overall, I did have a fun time with this movie. I can't give it an overall recommendation, though, because I watched another review before doing this where they were, like, a little bit more scathing, so I'm pretty sure that a lot of people probably won't particularly enjoy this movie. I think the Rotten Tomatoes score is, like, really low, too, like, critic and audience, like, especially compared to, like, Hubie Halloween, which is obviously disappointing, because Hubie Halloween is garbage. There's my review for Hubie Halloween. Garbage. This movie definitely has a lot of great ideas behind it, and it definitely had some passion to tell some creepy stories in an anthology way, and make something that was genuinely kind of special. I just think, for the next one, if they do make another Books of Blood, or if Brandon Braga and this team come together to make another horror movie or anything like that, there's just a couple notes that he needs to pick up on as far as, like, there's certain ways that you can stage it and have the intensity be at an all-time high without taking the audience out, or anything else I obviously already mentioned in this review. But I was entertained by this movie, but not enough to say, like, this is, like, a legitimately great movie. This is a great movie like Trick or Treat, which is like legitimately like one of my favorite Halloween movies of all time now. This is just one of those movies that unfortunately has a lot of issues, and I can have fun with it, and I know some other people who might be more into horror or watching something around Halloween time might dig it too, but these other people that aren't really into horror and maybe just they only like horror when it's like really, really, really great, and then anything else is kind of like, okay, this is kind of falling by the wayside, probably won't be for them, which is the most disappointing part, and they could have maybe improved it, but those issues are still there. I'm going to give Books of Blood a C+. I had fun with it, and if you want to watch something for Halloween, this could definitely fill that itch for you, at least for one night. Like, if you need a movie to watch one night and you're at a blank, just, I don't know, put on Books of Blood. I don't know, maybe you might really dig it. You might. You might not be bothered by some of the things I've mentioned in this review, but if you're not really into horror, maybe you're just like, I want to watch something, just anything, you probably will never stumble upon Books of Blood ever. But if you've seen Books of Blood, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.